Hi, I'm Doc Palmer. I'm the author of McGraw-Hill's best-selling reliability book, The Maintenance Planning and Scheduling Handbook. Maintenance planning and scheduling should be a competitive edge. It's difficult to achieve because of some common misperceptions, but it's simple to achieve if we can master those two concepts. One is that plans aren't perfect. We want to run a Deming cycle to make plans better over the years. The second is Parkinson's law. Parkinson's law is the amount of work assigned expands to fill the amount of time available. Instead of scheduling to create a calendar or to complete the schedule, we want to create a schedule to help us complete more work than we would normally complete. And we need to fully load schedules, weekly schedules to do that, where it's okay to break the schedule. We've been talking about the storeroom for the last 2 times. This will be the third out of 3 sessions that I want to talk about the storeroom. We deal with the storeroom so closely from a maintenance standpoint. We really want to communicate well and understand the storeroom. The first session 2 times ago, we talked about some concepts like LIFO and FIFO and the incredibly large cost, the carrying cost of storeroom, and where is it in the storeroom. If you're carrying a $10 million storeroom, $10 million worth of spare parts, there's a 20% carrying cost for everyone. That means that $2 million a year, it's costing your company to carry those parts. That's $10 million you can't use to buy more raw product to produce a product because it's tied up in the storeroom. There's the inability of using that $10 million to replace inherently unreliable equipment in your plant. That's all costing you $2 million a year, that cost of money. And that's including the cost of the storeroom and managing the storeroom itself. But that cost of money is a big consideration. Last time we looked at 3 ways upper executives look at, is your storeroom the right size? It's the percentage of the cost to replace your plant, replace your asset value. As a percentage of that, your storeroom should be a certain amount, the number of turns, and also the service level, which I like to call stockouts. Today, our last session with the storeroom, and next session we'll talk about the kitting and staging parts, which is more under our control in maintenance. This time we want to talk about going back to that huge cost of the storeroom. The best way to keep that from getting out of control is to carefully consider what you put into the storeroom to begin with. And I was in out western United States working with the Grand Coulee Dam a number of years ago, and I saw a planner using this chart. And I asked about it, and he said, we'll use this chart to decide whether to put something into the storeroom or not. So it's like a business case. It's not just keep putting stuff in until somebody complains, and then keep looking at these lists that the storeroom issues. You haven't used this in 2 years. If you don't make a business case, we'll throw it out. So the point of this chart would be to make a business case as you put it in. And I asked where he got that chart, and he used to work for Hershey's Chocolate Company in Hershey, Pennsylvania. So I backtracked the chart to Linda Dietzel in the Hershey's corporate organization that came up with this chart. And I want to share that. And the reason I'm doing a live and sharing this rather than uploading a video, it's easier for me to share slides. So we'll see if I can share a slide here. Window. Select that. Share. And there is the chart here. So this is not your chart. It's an example of a chart that you could use this principle to manage when you first put something in there. Not just, hey, it was left over from a project, let's put it in the storeroom rather than throw it away. Because every time you put something in the storeroom that shouldn't be in there per a business case, you're keeping yourself from putting something else in the storeroom. Eventually, when you pop this psychological cap, that you just got too much stuff in the storeroom, and that carrying cost is eating you alive. So Linda, and I'll use her name since she came up with this chart, and I did get to meet Linda last month when I did work for Help Hershey Foods in Pennsylvania. And she said I could share this. And it's actually table 8-1, which is the inventory chapter in the 4th edition of my handbook. Linda says, well, if you come up with 8 points, I'll put it in the storeroom. If you can't come up with 8 points on this chart, we probably don't need to carry it. So just on the availability, if I can walk across the street and buy one like today, why should I carry it in the storeroom? But if I really need it and it takes me more than a week to get it, maybe I should carry it in the storeroom. And then on production critical, and I would add to that safety, environmental, legal, and insurance. If it's just a spare piece of equipment, yeah, why why should I care about how quickly I can repair a spare piece of equipment? But an element and equipment, I think that's getting closer to not just the maybe part of an asset, but maybe the whole asset, up to taking a line down, which is actually you're losing product, and taking a whole plant down. So you're getting 4 points and 5 points for that. Now, if it could take a line down, maybe more expensively, you could go to another line, or you're out of product for a short amount of time, but I could quickly get one. Well, that's 5 points. That's not 8 points. But, I've got one piece of equipment that uses it, and I think I'll use one of them here. So that's 7 points. We're getting close. The number of pumps that uses that gasket, there's only one pump, or 5 pumps, 5 pumps use that gasket. I think I use one of these spare parts each year, or I think I use 3 or 4 of these each year. So trying to come up with that. And you could see where this could dovetail into your definition of a critical spare. If it could take a line down and it takes a while to get it, well, that's 10 points right there. So that's probably a good definition of a critical asset. And pretty close to take the plant down, but it takes a day or two to get it. You're talking about a critical asset. And you're going to get a point or so down here too. So I just like the idea of a business case as you put something into there. So let me stop sharing this chart and mention some other comments. Here I am back to my face. I was at a conference held by Sask Power in Saskatchewan, Regina, Saskatchewan, a number of years ago, and they use SAP, and they had gathered SAP users from around the world. It was kind of an in-house users conference, not just in-house, but a user conference made by one of the users. And Greg Manley was there. Greg Manley was recognized as their inventory guru. And he at that time worked for Kraft Mayonnaise in Massachusetts at a plant. And I want to share some of his thoughts that really struck me continuing into this business case concept. Greg says, if you're not going to carry something because you don't get enough points, you've decided you're not going to carry it in the storeroom, which is a good decision, maybe. Go ahead and put it on a spare parts list. Just list it as 00 min max. If that's your terminology for your asset, you're going to carry 0 in stock. So when you do need one, you don't have to waste time figuring out what it is. You go to the spare parts list, you look up where you buy it from, and you go ahead and buy one. And then Greg says, if that's the case, you've decided for a particular item, you should not be stocking it. When you finally do buy one, avoid give me 2. You only need one. Why should you go ahead and order 2? Well, we're going to save a purchasing cost. We'll go ahead and get 2 while we're ordering it. No, you're not saving money in the long run, because that extra one's going to go in the storeroom. There's a 20% carrying cost on that. And it's bumping toward that psychological, say $10 million, where some top executives are going to complain. It's a glaring cost the storeroom is. It's a glaring cost. Don't put it in the storeroom if you don't need it. If you've decided there's not a business case for stocking it, when you do buy one, avoid give me 2. That is hard to resist. And then I was working with a plant in Missouri. And right at this point, I was making this point in the workshop that I do. This reliability engineer said, For those items, we buy one to use, one to lose, and one to set aside. No, I think they were pulling my leg, but I thought that was pretty funny. Then Greg says his second point here out of 4 points. If you do carry something in the storeroom, it should be at least on the bill of materials for at least one item in your plan. You should never go to an item in the storeroom and say, I wonder where we use this. You should be able to backtrack it to a bill of materials to an asset. That's critical for keeping track. Our plants are constantly growing and changing and adapting. You may change out one model of pump to a new model of pump. And if you don't have any of the old model pump anymore, you don't need to be carrying any spares for that. You need to know that because you're backtracking it to your active plant usage, active plant layout. And then it might be that you're changing the technology. You're going from this style motor to this style motor, or this manufacturer away from that manufacturer to another manufacturer. You need to be able to find the old stuff and surplus it, because you might think it's free, it's got a value, it's popping against that cap. And if you can't zero out or depreciate the cost, it's going to make some executive start the bloodletting. You've got to cut the inventory in half, or carrying cost is too high, we're wasting money. So don't be carrying parts. Not only is it a cost thing, you're clogging up the storeroom. You're making it hard to find stuff because it's buried under something you don't even use. Greg says we ought to plan materials. Well, I think that's good. That's coming from the inventory group, that we got to plan materials better. And that's from the maintenance side, planning materials. We need to be doing a better job in the storeroom. And I think that's saying we need to work together with the storeroom. The planning department is not a crutch for a bad storeroom. It's to help us leverage a good storeroom. And the storeroom's not a crutch for a bad planning department. We still need planning to get the right parts to the right assets and be efficient working on things. And then finally, Greg's fourth point, he's got 4 KPIs he likes to look at in particular. 3 we've talked about, 1 we haven't. The first one we have talked about is the value, $10 million. If that's a typical, certainly good for the math, typical storeroom for a decent sized plant, $10 million worth of spare parts. That's just a crushing number. It's a glaring cost. It's not like the glaring cost of maintenance, because maintenance is thought of as a necessary evil. All of that thinking's wrong. Maintenance is an investment in reliability so he can produce a product and make a profit. If you're not investing in your reliability, eventually you're not going to have a profit. The storeroom is an investment in good maintenance, but it certainly is a more glaring cost there. That $10 million, that's costing us $2 million a year. What are we going to do about that? Is it the right size? Then the other one, Greg likes inventory turns. That's really popular. It's the industry number, I think, is 1.5 to 2 turns. The ideal apparently is 2. That means if you're carrying $10 million, you got to be using $20 million worth of spare parts every year out of the storeroom. So if you want to keep a storeroom, use the storeroom. Don't bypass the storeroom because it's easier to get it from a contractor or your own P card. We need to work better with the storeroom. Greg mentions inventory service level as another KPI. I like to call that stockouts. We talked about that extensively last time. I think the storeroom has trouble tracking its service level, or stockouts, as I like to call them, because when a mechanic goes to the storeroom and says, hey, I need this gasket, and the storeroom says, well, we're supposed to carry it, but we're out, that's a stockout. And I think the number is about 3% is okay. Out of 100 trips to the storeroom, 3 times, the storeroom says, we don't have any. But I don't think the storeroom can accurately track that. So I don't know if that 3% is based on the storeroom not adequately tracking that, or that's a true number, theoretically true number. Because what happens a lot of time is the mechanic goes to the storeroom says we're out. And the mechanic says, well, never mind, I'll do the job a different way, which is a whole nother line of questioning there that we talked about last time. So we don't register a stock out, but yes, we do have a stock out, and we complain about the storeroom. The fourth KPI Greg talks about, we haven't talked about, it's more of an internal thing that the storeroom uses that we should be aware of, is inventory accuracy. My understanding is they would like to be 95% or more accurate. To talk about what accuracy is, we'll lead up to it. Your computer system says you have 3 of these $20,000 gearboxes on the shelf. That's what the computer says. You go over to the shelf and there's 4. Well, the computer said 3, but you have 4, so you're not accurate. Or you go to the shelf and there's only 2, but the computer said you had 3. So that's not accurate. Well, they actually track the accuracy in terms of absolute dollars. So if you're supposed to have 3, or the computer says you have 3, but you have 4 for these $20,000 gearboxes, you're $20,000 to the bad. But if you only had 2, but the computer said you have 3, you're still $20,000 to the bad. It's just a different way. So they add up all the absolute values of these, and they would like to be 95%. So say you're supposed to have $10 million, you have 95% of that above or under. The C items, you're supposed to have 1,000 zip ties. You have 1,500 zip ties. You have 500 too many. You're $5 to the bad. So it's not a big item it's not a big issue, no pun intended, for the storeroom for the C items that we talked about, A, B, and C items. So that leads us to talk about cycle counts. The storeroom goes out and actually does an audit of the A items very frequently, maybe once a month or even more frequently. We're supposed to only have 3 $20,000 gearboxes. Let's make sure we have 3 on the shelf, if that's what the computer says. The C items, the cycle count might be once a year. Let's just make sure we have some zip ties. So cycle count's different from turns. Cycle counts, the individual items or class of items, how many times do they actually look to see that they're accurate on those or not. So that's the take on inventory from a maintenance person standpoint. We need to work with the storeroom. They're our partners in reliability. Next time, we're going to talk about kitting and staging parts, which is more under our control. Kitting parts can be a huge trap. If you're not careful, you're getting something out of the storeroom before you need it, and you'll lose it before the job starts. So you had it in a well-protected storeroom, you took it out, you scattered it to the wind, and you don't have it when the job parts. So we'll split some hairs on kitting parts. That'll be next time. Thanks for letting me be part of your maintenance family and giving you my 2 cents on that storeroom. And you can see some of my past conference presentations and articles on my website. That's palmerplanning.com. And thanks for joining me, and we'll see you next time. Lord willing, God bless.